In Hollywood's golden age, Ellen Corby was one of the most beloved character actresses of her time, adored for her warm smile, sharp wit, and unforgettable role as Grandma Esther Walton on The Waltons. To millions, she was the picture of kindness and gentle wisdom. But behind the camera, Ellen's real life was far from the wholesome image she portrayed. Throughout her long career, she worked alongside some of the biggest legends in the industry. Yet there was one man she could never forgive. One actor who brought out a bitterness and resentment that lingered with her for decades. Their feud became one of the most quietly intense rivalries in old Hollywood, a clash of ego, pride, and betrayal that shaped both their lives in ways few ever knew. Ellen Corby was known for her professionalism, but when it came to him, her patience broke. On set, their tension was palpable. Off set, she refused to even mention his name in interviews. To her, he embodied everything wrong with fame, arrogance, selfishness and cruelty hidden behind charm and success. Years later, when she finally opened up about what really happened between them, the revelation stunned those who thought they knew her. What began as admiration had turned to disappointment, and then to hatred. This is the untold story of Ellen Corby's deepest grudge, the man who betrayed her trust, and how one bitter experience left a scar that fame, awards, and time could never truly heal. Because when Ellen Corby hated someone, she meant it. By the early 1950s, Ellen Corby had carved out her place in Hollywood. She wasn't a leading lady. She was something rarer, a character actress who could make even the smallest role unforgettable. Her talent didn't scream, it whispered. She gave every line authenticity, every glance meaning. When she appeared in It's a Wonderful Life or Shane, audiences instantly connected to her warmth and humanity. But as Ellen's quiet grace won hearts, another figure dominated the studios with charm and power, a man whose name seemed to open every door. He was handsome, talented, and endlessly confident, the kind of actor who could make producers laugh and co-stars swoon. To most of Hollywood, he was untouchable, but to Ellen Corby, he was something else entirely. They met on a film set, one of those grand studio productions that promised stardom for everyone involved. At first, Ellen admired him. She thought he was professional, driven, and serious about his craft. But soon she noticed cracks beneath the polished exterior. His charm was a mask, his kindness selective. Behind closed doors, he belittled the crew, mocked less famous co-stars, and treated Ellen like she was beneath him. To him, Ellen was just a supporting actress, someone to make his performance shine brighter. For her, that arrogance was unforgivable. She had worked her way up from the bottom, a script girl turned actress, and she believed everyone on set deserved respect. Rumors spread quickly. The two clashed over creative differences, and their arguments became the talk of the studio. Ellen refused to be intimidated, even as others urged her to stay quiet. "He's the studio's golden boy," a friend warned her. "You can't win against him." But Ellen didn't care about winning. She cared about integrity, and when he humiliated a young makeup artist during filming, she finally snapped, calling him out in front of the entire cast and crew. The set went silent. No one dared breathe. From that day on, their relationship turned icy. The actor, furious that anyone, especially Ellen Corby, had dared to challenge him, made her life difficult on set. He spread rumors that she was difficult, tried to have her scenes cut, and even refused to film certain moments with her unless the director intervened. For Ellen, it was a brutal awakening. Hollywood wasn't the dreamland she'd imagined. It was a place where bullies thrived, and kindness was mistaken for weakness. But Ellen Corby was no pushover. She held her head high, did her work, and let her talent speak louder than any scandal. Still, that experience changed her forever. The man she had once respected had become a symbol of everything she despised in Hollywood: vanity, ego, and cruelty masked as success. When the cameras finally stopped rolling, Ellen vowed never to work with him again. And though decades would pass, the bitterness of that betrayal never truly faded. She once said in an interview years later, "You don't forget the people who make you feel small. You just learn to smile when you see their names in lights." It was a quiet confession, one that hinted at the deep wound she carried. And as the years went on, the world would slowly learn just how deep that wound truly went. The tension between Ellen Corby and the unnamed Hollywood actor might have started on a film set. But what happened next went far beyond professional rivalry. It became personal, painfully personal. After their first confrontation, Ellen hoped time would cool tempers. She had no interest in feuds or gossip. She only wanted to work and move on. But the man she had angered wasn't content to let it go. Behind the scenes, he began quietly sabotaging her. He whispered to directors that she was emotional, to producers that she struggled with direction. In Hollywood's golden age, a world run by powerful men and fragile egos, and such whispers could end a woman's career, Ellen started losing roles she'd been promised. Casting agents who once greeted her warmly now turned cold. One studio executive even told her bluntly, "We can't afford to upset him. He's our biggest box office name." The betrayal cut deep. Ellen had built her career through sheer perseverance. She had no powerful friends, no family ties in the business, just her talent and her integrity. To see years of hard work undone because of one man's pride was devastating, but Ellen didn't collapse under the pressure. She retreated, quietly, gracefully, and focused on smaller roles in independent projects. Her performances remained flawless, but the sparkle in her eyes dimmed. Something inside her had changed. In private, she spoke to friends about what had happened. One recalled that Ellen's voice trembled when she mentioned his name. "He made me doubt myself," she said softly. "He made me feel like all those years meant nothing." It wasn't just the loss of work that hurt. It was the betrayal of respect. Ellen had believed that talent and kindness would always win in the end. But now she saw the darker truth of Hollywood. It wasn't always about who was best, but who held the most power. That realization broke her spirit, if only for a time. She withdrew from the Hollywood social scene, skipping premieres and parties. Reporters noticed her absence, assuming she was simply aging out of the industry. But those close to her knew the truth. Ellen Corby wasn't fading away. She was protecting what little of her peace remained. Years later, when the man in question suffered his own career downfall, after scandal and controversy caught up to him, Ellen's reaction was not satisfaction, but sadness. "He had everything," she reportedly told a friend, "and he wasted it on ego." By the time she joined the Waltons in the early 1970s, Ellen had rebuilt her career from the ashes. Her role as Grandma Esther brought her the respect and admiration she had always deserved. But behind her gentle smile and grandmotherly warmth, there was a woman who carried old wounds. During one interview, a journalist asked her about forgiveness. Her answer was calm, but her eyes told another story. "I believe in forgiveness," she said, "but I don't believe you have to invite the same people to hurt you twice." That one line summed up everything. Ellen had learned that forgiveness didn't always mean reconciliation. Sometimes, it meant walking away forever. And though she never named the man publicly, everyone who knew her could sense the truth. The hatred she carried wasn't born out of cruelty. It came from pain, the kind of pain that only betrayal from someone you once respected can cause. But fate, as it often does in Hollywood, wasn't finished with them yet. Because years later, when tragedy struck, Ellen Corby would be forced to confront her past, and the man she vowed never to speak to again. By the late 1960s, Ellen Corby had weathered more than her fair share of Hollywood storms. She had survived the whispers, the blacklisting, and the years of being passed over for roles that once seemed guaranteed. Still, she remained resilient, one of those rare actors who carried a quiet strength that audiences never forgot. But nothing could prepare her for what would happen next. A moment that would test her spirit more than any feud, more than any betrayal. One afternoon, while filming a small television drama, Ellen received word that the man she had once despised, the actor she swore she would never forgive, had suffered a devastating personal tragedy. He had lost someone close to him, and suddenly, the Hollywood arrogance that once surrounded him had vanished. To everyone's surprise, Ellen didn't gloat or smile. She simply grew quiet. Those who knew her said she seemed distant for days, as if caught between two conflicting emotions, anger and compassion. And then, without warning, she did something no one expected. Ellen sent him a letter. It wasn't long or sentimental, just a few handwritten lines. Grief humbles us all. I hope you find peace as we all must. She didn't sign it with warmth, but with dignity. It was the kind of message that only Ellen Corby could write. Firm, yet deeply human. Weeks passed. No reply came. Ellen assumed he had ignored it, just as he had ignored kindness before. But then, one morning, a letter arrived at her home in a familiar, careful script. Inside was a single sentence that changed everything. I never forgot what I did to you. And I'm sorry, Ellen read it several times. There was no signature, but she didn't need one. She knew exactly who had written it. For years, that letter remained in her desk drawer, folded neatly, untouched, but never thrown away. It was a relic of something deeper, not forgiveness, not reconciliation, but closure. From that day on, Ellen carried herself differently. There was a calmness to her presence, a peace that others noticed but couldn't explain. Friends later said it was as if she had finally let go of the bitterness that had haunted her for decades. But the past never truly disappears in Hollywood. When The Waltons premiered in 1972 and became a hit, journalists began digging into Ellen's past again, unearthing old rumors and asking about her supposed rivalry with one of Hollywood's most famous men. Ellen refused to engage. When one reporter pushed too hard, asking if she still hated him, she simply smiled and said, "Hate takes energy I'd rather spend on living." It was the closest she ever came to admitting how deeply that experience had shaped her. Years later, after the actor passed away, Ellen was seen at his small, private memorial, sitting quietly in the back row, her face unreadable. Some thought she was there to pay respect. Others believed she came for something far more personal, to finally say goodbye to the anger that had shadowed her life for so long. As the service ended, a friend leaned over and whispered, "Why did you come?" Ellen's answer was simple, "Because even the people we hate teach us who we are." That day marked the end of a long and painful chapter in her life. But it also revealed something profound, that even the fiercest hatred can lead, eventually, to understanding. As the years rolled into the twilight of her career, Ellen Corby became a symbol of grace, endurance, and quiet wisdom. Her portrayal of Grandma Esther Walton on The Waltons earned her not only an Emmy, but the love of an entire generation. People saw her as a maternal figure, strong, kind, and moral. Yet beneath that tender image lived a woman who had carried decades of pain, anger, and disappointment. But time has a way of softening even the hardest edges of the past. By the late 1980s, Ellen had suffered a massive stroke that left her partially paralyzed and limited her ability to speak. Despite her condition, she continued to appear on The Waltons, her real-life struggle mirroring her character's quiet perseverance. Those who visited her during this period often remarked that she had found an unusual peace, as if she had finally made peace with every ghost that haunted her. One afternoon, a young interviewer from a local paper sat with her at her modest Los Angeles home. They spoke about her life, her career, and her faith. But when the interviewer hesitantly brought up the man she once had problems with in the old studio days, Ellen did something no one expected. She smiled. Her voice was soft but clear. "I didn't hate him. I hated what he did. There's a difference." For the first time, Ellen admitted publicly what she had never dared to say before. The man who had humiliated her, sabotaged her work, and nearly destroyed her career had also, in an unintended way, shaped her resilience. "He made me stronger," she said. "Because of him, I learned that your dignity is the only thing no one can take from you unless you hand it over." It was a revelation that stunned those who knew the history between them. Over time, that quote would resurface in documentaries and retrospectives about her life, used as proof of her wisdom and grace. But few knew how much it had cost her to reach that point. In her later years, Ellen often received letters from young actors, many of them women, who saw her as an inspiration. They thanked her for paving the way, for standing up to bullies in an industry where silence was safer. Ellen responded to as many as she could, always with the same message. Never let someone's cruelty define your worth. Their actions say more about them than they ever will about you. Those words, written in trembling handwriting, revealed the legacy she wanted to leave behind. Not the bitterness of what had been done to her, but the lessons she had learned from surviving it. When Ellen Corby passed away in 1999 at the age of 87, tributes poured in from co-stars, friends, and fans around the world. They remembered her as a consummate professional, a kind soul, and the heart of the Waltons. Yet among all the eulogies, one stood out, a short statement from an old Hollywood journalist who had once covered her feud decades earlier. It read, "Ellen Corby taught us that forgiveness isn't about forgetting the pain. It's about refusing to let it own you." That single line encapsulated everything Ellen had come to believe. She never denied the anger she once felt, nor did she pretend it didn't hurt. But in the end, she chose peace, not for him, but for herself. And so, when people now recall Ellen Corby, they remember more than her warm laughter or her grandmotherly charm. They remember a woman who faced betrayal, humiliation, and hardship, and somehow turned it into strength. Because sometimes, the most powerful revenge isn't hate. It's living long enough to outshine the people who tried to break you.